You're listening to TGI Sports Talk with your host, Keith Angle, on Northeast Streaming Sports.
Good morning, everybody. Keith Angle for TGI Sports Talk. It's Friday, April 2nd. No more April Fool's jokes, please. And for the future, please only do them on April 1st. Doing them on March 31st is not cool. Just an FYI. Public service announcement for you this morning. We're live from East Greenbush, New York. Still the only live streaming webcast, sports webcast from East Greenbush, New York. It's a little bit dreary here, but it is spring and baseball is upon us. We're going to talk with Kevin Kernan, America's most beloved sports writer. As you know, longtime sports writer. I know him mostly from the New York Post. He's with Ball 9, and his stuff is really good. All the stuff on Ball 9 is really good. So check that out. He's also contributing to many podcasts like this, and we're going to jump right into it with Kevin right now. Kevin Kernan. Good morning, Kevin.
Keith, great to be with you.
That is a good-looking Ball 9
That's
hat you got there.
I'm not a model, but I'll wear this for a minute, you know.
Well,
and also,
I'm sure
Keith, before we go any further,
sure.
This is one of our favorite shirts, Over Nerding. That's where we are in Major League Baseball. But like you said, it's spring, new year. Let's have some fun.
Yeah, we'll have some fun. We're going to jump into we're going to jump into some of the good, some of the bad, some of the ugly, but we'll start out with the good. I'll say good morning to Dave Guyette, always number one in the room. Good morning, Dave. How you doing, buddy? And the rest of you should come. I'll try to get you in. Obviously, we do have Kevin, as I mentioned, America's most beloved sports writer. My favorite tagline, I think, of all the people I've had on, Kevin. So thank you. By the way, I'll remind you, you were my first guest on my show, and I appreciate you coming on that day, and I appreciate you coming back today. We had great reception that day, and I think we'll have it again today. So thanks again.
I think we need to let everybody know that the nickname is kind of ironic, and it's not. I didn't give it to myself. Andy McCullough, who's now with the Athletic, was the one who gave it to me.
Yes, I remember covering that in the first show, and I do like the moniker, though. It's awesome.
It's a great one. AMBS.
No. So let's jump in. I guess we'll start, as I said, we're looking at a new baseball season. Spring is here, even though it's not terribly spring-like here in upstate New York. You probably don't miss that weather too much, I'm going to assume. But it is baseball season. We had opening day yesterday. Kevin, let's talk a little bit about the good. There's some good stuff. I mean, some teams made some good moves and put themselves in a good position for this season. Let's talk about quickly as we head into the new season, who really put themselves in the best position to succeed this year in your mind?
Well, the Mets. I think the Mets are making the Battle of New York, adding Lindor, adding James McCann. You know, that's we talked about last time, Keith. It's always, you want to get strong up the middle in baseball. It's about defense. Now, besides Lindor's talent, and I've known him a long time, always had a great relationship with him in the playoffs. He's one of the most fun guys to go cover because he loves the game. He reminds me of Robbie Alomar. Don't forget, I covered Robbie Alomar when he was a rookie in 1988 in San Diego. You're talking to an old guy. So I've been around a long time.
I'm only right behind you, so.
but I stay young because I get along great with these athletes for the most part. And Lindor is just like Alomar, you know, the way he approaches the game, and he's going to take pressure, not only talent-wise, but emotionally, he's going to take pressure off Pete Alonso. He's going to allow Pete Alonso to have more fun. You know, he's the guy, like we used to always go to David Wright after a game. He's the guy we'll go to. And he has something to say. He's not one guy. He's not just one guy just, is a boring interview. If he'll say it, he'll say it. And DeGrom, you know how happy DeGrom is now to know that ground ball up the middle is going to be caught, you know? And there's so many teams. I was watching I tried to watch a lot of games yesterday, and I was watching the Reds game for a little bit. And Suarez, they've moved him to shortstop, you know, and he made a couple. It's the nerds running baseball think anybody can play anywhere. if you're a shortstop, you're almost born to be a shortstop, like Derek Jeter or that, and that's where Lindor's at. So I'll put the Mets at the top of the list simply because they already have DeGrom. I would have loved to see them get Springer to really not, do it. But I don't think the owners would have been very happy if Cohen came in and just really exploded everybody with financials. By signing Lindor, he's signing his own man, so he's not taking away and changing the complex, the terrain of the game. The other thing, of course, and I'm staying with shortstops. I worked in San Diego 10 years. Tatis Jr. is very similar, not the player Lindor is now. Now, let me say this last thing about Lindor. Stop hitting home runs. I don't want him hitting home runs. I mean, if they come, they come. But he is the guy that he can go left center, right center, doubles. It's fun to watch him hit a double. Those are the things that ignite an offense. And that's what Tatis Jr. does in San Diego. And that's going to be a great matchup all year out in San Diego with the Dodgers. Dodgers have continued to done good things. I think there are some good. I'm going to throw one stat at you. I use important stats. I just don't use numbers. You turn on a game now, and you're just flooded with stats, and after a while, they don't mean anything. They don't mean anything.
Yeah, if I see exit velocity one more time, I'm going to kill myself.
I was watching one of the games yesterday, and actually, after every hit, they post the exit velocity. This tells me that that's a TV station that doesn't know anything about baseball, or the guy running that show doesn't know. On occasion, it's interesting, okay, but what does it really mean? I've been around baseball my whole life. Balls hit hard, it's hit hard. So the numbers. One number I want to throw at you, and I'd love to see it change this year. Mike Trout has 12 postseason at bats. 12. Probably the best player in the game. This guy here, Derek Jeter, at the same age as Mike Trout is now, 30, basically his 30-year-old season, he had 366 at bats. So baseball had this guy, and I covered the NBA and the NFL. I covered Magic. I covered Bird. Baseball has this guy, Mike Trout, their best player. They can't get him to the playoffs because they have teams. The guys in charge of the Angels through the years are nerds who don't get it and can't build a team. Maybe now they've hired a few more scouts. They have some good scouting people. Maybe they can get there now. And we can celebrate Mike Trout because that's what we're trying to celebrate baseball, not ruin baseball.
Yeah, I was going to bring that up. I read your article. I think it was your most recent article. Touched on that, and I honestly, this is the guy who's been the best player in baseball over the last decade-ish, right? And I was shocked to find out he only had 12 postseason at bats. I did not realize that, and it is sad because a lot of people don't, obviously casual fans don't watch the games maybe during the season as much as you and I might and others, and they watch postseason baseball and they don't even know who Mike Trout is.
No, he has no idea with the casual fan, and it's a shame. So I'm just pointing that out. That's a place where baseball has failed. Not that you get, and also look at all the teams that made the playoffs last year and everything. Not that you give them a golden road to the playoffs, but you make sure. I remember David Stern. I remember the NFL when George Young was hired for the Giants as GM. I was covering the Giants back then too as well. I remember the NFL wanted the Giants to succeed, and then you started getting the Lawrence Taylors, and things like that in the playoffs. The baseball doesn't know how to run its own game. They should have made sure the best young GM or best GMs gets out to the Angels. So I blame ownership. I blame baseball, but also Trout's got to push too. I think if you're a player in that position, you got to make sure, hey, let's get this right. So that's where we are today in the game. Hopefully, the Padres bring a lot of fans back. Great fans in San Diego too, and the Yankees are strong, but they got some issues. Not getting ahead of ourselves, but yesterday was a microcosm of a big playoff game for the Yankees.
Yeah. We'll jump into that in the bat a little bit because I've got some pretty strong opinions that have not always gone over well with some of the Yankee groups I share them to. Some of the other good, we got 162 games back theoretically, which is huge to me. Last year, 60 games. It's nice we had baseball, but baseball, we know it as a marathon, and that's part of the lure of the game to me. And that's huge, right? Being back to a full schedule, even with some of the odd rules that we still have to play with.
Yeah, absolutely. And one of the things too, I talked to Jack McKean about that. That was a great point. And he said the 60 game schedule is an exhibition season. It's not. It's not a season.
Yeah.
And baseball is made for 162 games. The thing I don't want to hear, and I'm hearing too much of it already, and I know it's hard broadcasting a game, but I'm hearing too much of, oh, how are the players going to react? How are the pitchers going to react? After having only thrown X amount of innings last year. If anything, if you know anything about the game, the pitchers should be in better shape now because they didn't burn themselves out last year, except for the teams that burned out their bullpens. I guarantee you that Jake DeGrom is ready to go this year like never before. And his arm is probably feeling great. And I think we saw it in spring training where he has such great rhythm. And I want to make this clear to the fan because everybody's all excited about, drive line and all that stuff. It's not max effort every time. It's not max effort. It's about building up. And you could see DeGrom working in the spring. I watched one particular at bat against Bregman. Very interesting at bat. And this is what I look for. I don't look for, I look for trends in spring. But he faced Bregman twice, DeGrom did. And Bregman is a great hitter. He threw him nothing but fastballs. And Bregman, he got him out both times. But he has Bregman so set. If he happens to meet Bregman somewhere along the line this year in a big at-bat, guarantee he strikes him out with a slider.
He's going to remember that, yeah.
And that's the beauty of baseball. That's watching the game and understanding the game. That's why it's great to watch a pitcher have to throw over and be able to throw. And the limited minor, the rule they're using in the minors, two throws over or something like that. Some crazy rule.
Oh gosh. We'll get into some of that.
Yeah, when a father is in the stands or a mother's in the stands with her child. Those are the things you explain to your kid. This is what makes the game within the game something special. And baseball is getting rid of that, and it's I have a theory about that, and I want to share it now. Actually, I was talking to a very smart baseball guy, and he's the one who proposed it, and I agree. He said the people in charge of baseball now, they don't really sit and watch a whole game like you and I do, and like real fans do, or we used to do. They'll watch highlights, snippets.
Yeah.
So they don't get the nuances of the game. That's why they come in with all these crazy rules, and I call them obese bases, bigger bases now. Part of the beauty of baseball is the 90 feet, Now we have these bigger bases. So, I'm not a mathematician, but it's going to be easier to get to second now than it used to be because it's a bigger base. It's like the oven mitts they put on their hand. If you notice, some of these players, I don't know if they have these regulated, but some of them have these oven mitts on their hands that go way out, gives them an extra 3 pitches.
Yeah.
These are nuances of the game that you need to discover, learn, and talk about. Not just launch angle, exit velo, and the speed of a pitch from another. Every drive line, max effort pitch is ridiculous. One quick story. I was talking to Glavine about this, Hall of Famer Tom Glavine. His rookie year, he lost 17 games. He's studying himself. He's a very, he's a scientific type pitcher. He talked to all his hitters and said, what am I doing? What's the hardest pitch to hit? They told him the low outside fastball. Everybody told him the same thing. So he worked on that command the next year. He goes on to win 300 games because he changed going on. He was max effort, but he died, and he's not a speed demon, but he dialed it back so he had command. And that's where we're at in baseball. The smart pitchers do that. And even Garrett Cole yesterday. It was funny. I was talking to Carl Erskine last week. And I'm not dropping names. I'm just trying to explain things here. He's 94 years old, former Brooklyn Dodger. And he had a funny conversation. He was talking about how more crappy sliders wind up in the upper deck. And that's exactly what happened to the Yankees yesterday. Paul, who's got an unbelievable fastball that nobody wants to see, he throws a crappy slider and it winds up basically in the upper deck. So that's where we're at. Be smarter, players.
That's a bit of an aberration for Cole, though. You were talking about DeGrom, and there's only a handful of guys that I like to watch that remind me of guys from, the 60s and 70s who pound the strike zone. And they don't want to come. They aren't looking to come out of games. We've talked about this in the past. Most pitchers are programmed. The 6th inning comes. I've thrown 90 or 100 pitches. I'm looking to the dugout for somebody to come and get. Yeah. But the DeGroms and Garrett Cole and Max Scherzer and guys like that, I love to watch pitch just because they pound the strike zone. They're going to give up some home runs. Somebody talked to me about Cole and home runs, and you just mentioned it, but not in the same context. I mean, if Catfish Hunter gave up more home runs than probably anybody in the history of baseball, maybe. I'm not sure about the number, but because he was around the strike zone, he only gave up solo home runs, right? Not 3-run home runs. So, but the game's changed a bit, obviously, in that regard. Let's stand on.
All right, Keith,
Go ahead.
one
Yep.
quick point.
Yep.
He's smarter than that, though. In that kind of one-run game, opening day, again, I don't look at everything the same. Here's my theory on that. Because of the lack of access and things, and you don't get the truth anymore anyway half the time. But my theory on that is that with the Yankees' new pitching coach, he's so into sequencing and things like that. Yeah. He was sequencing there, or he was scouting report pitching there instead of just realizing, it's kind of a chilly day. It's late in the game. The shadows are in my favor pretty soon, and also have the guts and the wherewithal to finish it off. And you just don't throw that pitch there. I don't care. And again, he's the best thing the Yankees got. So please don't misinterpret.
No.
I bet he's kicking himself in the butt for that pitch.
He probably isn't. I think he's a guy who he'll do his own thing. I think after a time. I think
he'll give somebody a chance.
Yeah.
If he gets burned, then he's doing his own thing.
Yeah, and you know what? That also your comments also point to, and we can go back to the playoffs and Blake Snell getting taken out of the game. I mean, you're just going by the playbook and doing what today's playbook, right? And this is what I'm supposed to do. You're not paying any attention to the game situation and what's really going on at the moment, and it's so frustrating. And I think
the way I describe that, so people really understand it, because I think that's one of the things I'm able to do, especially in my writing, is make it so you can understand it. Could you imagine if Kevin Cash, the catcher, remember he was a catcher, Kevin Cash. So imagine if Kevin Cash, the catcher, was catching Blake Snell there, and Kevin Cash, the manager, comes out and asks Kevin, and Kevin Cash, the catcher, hey, he say, I think we're going to go to the pen here. We're going to go to the guy who pitched 7 straight days. Even though Blake Snell's pitching the game, it was like Kevin Cash, the catcher, would have went ballistic. But because Kevin Cash, the manager, bows down to the nerds, he let them predetermine, let's get 6 innings or whatever out of Snell, and we'll move on and go to the bullpen. That decision. I call them the 5 o'clock decisions. The 5 o'clock decisions lose more games at 9:30 or 10 o'clock than anything.
Absolutely, that's a great analogy right there. Another good thing that we have to look forward to this year is the fans are back, at least in some capacity, in all ballparks, I believe. I mean, I could be wrong, but I think all ballparks have some kind of fan attendance right now.
Except for obviously they're not playing in, but if they were playing in Toronto, they probably wouldn't. Right. And
how big is that? I mean, I know I read in your article about burning all the cardboard cutouts, which I thought was an awesome idea, have a bonfire in all these ballparks. Because, I mean, the first time I saw it, I thought, oh, well, that's kind of cool. It's interesting. But you know what? One day, great. But after a couple of games, I'm like, this is just cheesy and silly.
Yeah, so, I couldn't agree with you more. And I think that again, that gives you insight into people running the game. They think it's cool. Oh yeah, and then also let's not forget they were probably making some money off that somehow. And I know some of the money went to charity and things like that. But I heard one funny story yesterday. I forget who the pitcher was or player was, but there was one player on one team that he would try to hit the cardboard cutouts and knock the heads off, in between innings. And I'm all with that guy. One day do it. Remind us that we have fans, but to see big overblown heads behind home plate. You're taking away from your own game. If baseball had any common sense last year, they would have rode with it and said, okay, we're going to improve the mic. So now you're going to hear everything in the game. We're making this major league game, a high school game where you can hear every word. And that would have been captivating to the audiences. They would have picked up some fans. They would have learned some things. But baseball being baseball, dummies. They pump in music and they put pump in sound and put in fake fans as opposed to letting the game sell the game.
Well, that's the problem overall, right? So, I mean, to the point of fans being at the stadium. So, how do even a limited number in Yankee Stadium? I don't know what the number they were allowed to have yesterday. 44,000, 3,800, something like that, probably.
Right.
Is it impactful for the players?
Yes, it is. Once the game starts, it doesn't really matter because you got to do what you got to do. But it gives you that extra jolt of playing in front of the fans. And I think it also showed how much they missed the fans. I think that's the biggest thing. And I think in some ways this was a humbling experience for the players because sometimes the players surround themselves with yes men, the team is yesing them to death, and then they don't realize you're playing the game for the players, for the fans, and they realize it now, and I think they love having the fans back. But I went to a game. I went to the Savannah Bananas game last September, and it's a 4,000 seat stadium, and they cut it to 2,000 last year. And they basically went all summer when they were playing. Baseball missed this one too. I thought you could have had fans in last year without getting too political or the pandemic situation. If the Savannah Bananas could figure out how to get their stadium half full last year, then the major league team should have figured it out. And it's very interesting what's going to go on in Texas with the full fans and things like that. But I think fans should be back in a big number. And isn't it funny, Keith? Isn't it funny how if you pan the stands, or if you look behind, almost everybody has their face mask off for the most part, or they're eating or drinking because they're so damn tired of those masks. And they're trying to get some kind of normalcy back, and that's what I've noticed. So I think it's great for the fan psyche to be back, and I think it's great for the players to be back. And I want to see more of it. I want to see bigger stadiums, more fans in the stands.
Yeah, as we go through the summer, I think we'll start to see that. I think both Texas teams are opening up with full capacity, right? I know the Rangers are.
Yeah, God bless Texas. And I live here in Florida, and we've been pretty wide open. Thank God the kids have gone to school. It's so important for kids to be in school. So important to maybe go to games and do things like this to see their friends, even see a high school game. That's one of the things I want to do soon. Go to a high school game, just see the game at different levels, sell the game and watch it and enjoy yourself. I mean, and like I said in my article the other day, have a hot dog, enjoy the hot dog, and get there early if you can. Talk to your neighbor. And hopefully they're not pumping in music where you can't hear yourself think, and just enjoy some organ music, sit back, relax. I think that's what we need now. And if baseball were smart, and that's a big if, they should have retro nights now where you just have nights where you hear the organ music, watch the game, hopefully your team wins, and you leave and everybody's happy. That's not that hard.
It's not that hard. Very good. Let's we'll pivot a little bit. We'll stick around with some good again, but let's talk a little bit about the bad. We're still stuck with 7-inning doubleheaders. We're still stuck with the runner on second base to start extra innings, which I think is just changing the whole. The game's been played one way for 100 and 30 years, whatever it is. And now this rule all of a sudden seems really bright to somebody, and nobody. And to me, Kevin, the ironic part of the thing the guy in second base, teams don't even take advantage of having a guy in second base with nobody out. They don't even take advantage of it. They just try to hit home runs.
You have too much common sense. What are you doing watching?
I know.
It's home run derby. It's still home run derby. And even the Blue Jays kind of got lucky. And these are the little things about baseball which makes it great. And I explained this to my wife when we were watching the game yesterday. Grichuk, who was basically lost his job because of Springer, he's playing. He comes up with some big hits in the game. He doubles in the winning run. And that's the beauty of the game. Somebody coming from nowhere who was pushed aside, and now he steps up, and that's what makes the game the game. But they have a chance to put the nail in the coffin. I don't even want to talk about the bunts that they tried, because the one guy struck out on a bunt with a ball bounced in front of the plate, and he's still trying to bunt it. So that, what that tells me? besides, we're getting all this talk about, fundamentals and this. That tells me they didn't work on stuff in spring training. You need to work hard on bunting. I want to go way back in time. Way back in and I played baseball through college, so I kind of know the game more than your average writer, I would say. I would definitely say that because I've been around the writers. And this is a weird way, but way back in high school in the early 70s, my baseball coach was a bunting fanatic, right? And like all of them were back then. And I'm not saying you all the time, but he taught us how to bunt. We actually had a drill where we had to hold the round part of the bat. And actually, I have a bat right here. So we would have to hold the bat, and we'd have to bunt the ball right here.
Oh, interesting.
In practice, but what did that do? That taught you to focus on really getting the bunt down. These guys can't even get the bunt down, and they're major league players. So yeah. And one other thing on the second base fake run, I call it. If you go back to the days of Sesame Street, Mr. Stuffaluffagus, I call it Rob Manfred's imaginary friend. I don't even refer to him for a second. I just refer to him. That's Rob Manfred's imaginary friend at second base.
Well, yeah, Rob Manfred. I mean, this whole segment I kind of was going to title "Can Baseball Survive Rob Manfred?" I mean, because things are getting. I mean, the things we're talking about now. Fortunately, some of the stuff. I'm so glad the expanded playoffs went away and all this other stuff, but we're stuck with these two rules. I mean, the 7-inning rule. Again, if managers were better managing their bullpens and pitchers were actually allowed to pitch, right? And that's I got a job and I got to pitch only the 5th inning. I got to pitch only the 6th inning. Or starting pitchers, as we mentioned before, looking to come out of games after 90 pitches because that's how they've been taught. Since they got to the minor leagues, right?
I was the canary in the in the mine shaft many years ago when they started the pitch limits in the minor leagues. I said this is going to ruin baseball, and they're saying it's saving arms, and they didn't save any arms. We still have more injuries than ever. So when they did that gave the pitchers an out. And one thing I've learned through the years with athletes, if you give them an out, some guys will take it. They'll take the out. So now these pitchers think they've done a great job. If they get through 6 innings, it's like, oh my God, Whereas I grew up and when I started covering the game, a pitcher wanted to finish. They wanted to finish. So they gave the out and they created this mess. And the other thing I would do too, when you have 7-inning doubleheaders, if the really smart teams should start doing this, I would design my rotation so my aces definitely pitch in those 7-inning games. Because that's a psychological advantage for you. So that may mean shifting your rotation a little bit, working out the days here and there, and it wouldn't be that hard.
You might even get complete games.
Yeah, and then you what the feeling is as a hitter going in to face Jacob deGrom, knowing you only have 7 innings, because that's the way it is, and so you got to make these new rules work for you, and if you would bunt guys over. The other thing is hilarious. I think we saw it in the Yankee game with Toronto. The Romero, he couldn't hold the runner on if I was on first base. I could steal it at 67 years old. I could steal the base on him. And Tauchman, a true baseball player, and I'm so glad the Yankees kept Tauchman. And I pointed this out.
I am too. Yeah.
He's a baseball player. He's a younger version of Brett Gardner, and he's great for a clubhouse. He wears all these goofy T-shirts. He's old school. And he should be playing every day somewhere. It's a shame that guy's not playing every day because he would make things happen. And you saw it stealing the 2 bases, but the Yankees couldn't even get him home from third base.
Yeah, he's certainly a valuable guy to have on a team. I agree. When the debate was coming down about him and between him and Bruce, I thought it was a no-brainer. I don't know how you consider, to me, a guy whose his best days are behind him. And is very one-dimensional. He can't play defense at any position, in my mind.
I disagree with you there a little bit. I like Jay Bruce for a lot of reasons because he gives you that lefty power bat if he's used right. There's nothing wrong. There's nothing. If you have that, if he's a little more one-dimensional now, then you use him in the best situations. And the Yankees didn't put him in the best situation yesterday. You could just see, and I've known Jay Bruce a long time. Like I said, I know Tauchman. Bruce, he's past his prime, but he was pressing. Nothing worse than a player pressing, and he was trying to do too much yesterday, only because of the situation he was put in. And hopefully the other thing I used to laugh about all the years of covering baseball, players loved it when the first game was over. And now we get in, they used to call it the real, okay, now we can play baseball. So I never go too crazy about opening day, what happens.
Yeah.
Because now the players can relax and get in a rhythm, and we'll see where it goes from here. But I agree with you. There was, Tachman was a guy who should have been there, but I would have found a way to keep Bruce. And the other thing was, clearly, the Yankees were not telling the truth on Luke Voigt. He was DHing early in the year in spring training.
Yeah.
If you know anything about baseball and watch his swings, he wasn't using his lower half.
Yeah.
So he was hurt from day one. And the Yankees probably knew this, and this is why they originally signed Bruce.
I'm not sure that's probably true, and I'm not sure this injury for Voigt, to stick that for a second, isn't a result of the injuries that he played through last year. He had foot injuries all year, and maybe the knee injury came from that.
You nailed it exactly. One foot thing, he had the foot injury. He's favoring the leg, and he never looked right even running last year early on. And I've been saying this for a year. And you got to wonder too when and he's a great player for the Yankees, emotional lift. But when you start hurting your legs, it's hard. And they talk about like he's going to come back from the knee injury, he's going to be fine, like in 4 weeks, 5 weeks. It's hard to hit with a surgically repaired knee. It takes a while. It might take a year to be himself.
Yeah, I mean, stick with the Yankees a little bit. I obviously I'm a Yankee fan, and I have said this for more than a year, and when I first started this show and I started doing some vlogs in between the interview shows, really short vlogs, I mean, I did some stuff beating up the Yankees pretty good because I just think this team is not put together, not constructed. Like a lot of teams in baseball are not constructed very well, right? I think bad defense at catcher, bad defense at shortstop. You talked about that earlier. Center field's okay, but he's hurt all the time. Hurt Hicks.
Overrated.
And no situational baseball played at all, and I just think the team needs to kind of take a step back and look at what they're doing overall.
I think you're right on, to be quite honest. And I know I've known Cashman a long time, but he fell in love. He fell in love with his analytic guys, kind of pushed away some of his scout guys, and now I think you're seeing the results of that. The game is not just numbers, and I think that lineup construction with the Yankees should be so much better. And I mean, really, to me, the most interesting thing, and I thought yesterday was a fascinating game with the Yankees on a lot of levels. But to me, the most interesting thing, and again, I'm a hitting guy. I'm more hitting oriented than pitching.
Yeah.
Never liked pitchers when I played. I still don't like them. I won't say the player, but I was texting with a player the other day, a major leaguer, about the story I did on Win Reality, which is Dan O'Dowd's new. It's an unbelievable hitting tool. It's virtual reality hitting done with TrackMan and TrackMan numbers. So you're actually for the major league guys, for the major league package, you actually are facing a Jacob deGrom. You're not swinging, but you're tracking for the most part. And so when this and this is fascinating. This is some of your most people didn't read this because they haven't. They need to find ball 9. But when this proposal was made to each team, and a lot of teams brought this, the Dodgers are big believers in win reality, and you can see it how they grind their at bats out. Cody Bellinger is a big believer in it. But I was texting with a major league player about this the other day, and I had heard a rumor that the pitchers, big name pitchers, I'm not going to name them, but a couple big name pitchers were so upset by this, they went to the Players Association and tried to get it stopped. And you can't stop it. I mean, it's America. It's still America, and you can get things done like this. But the player himself was saying, it's typical big baby, pitchers, and he used a couple other words that I won't do. But that's the way I am. But the most interesting thing yesterday was I thought the Blue Jays, who have a great pitching coach in Pete Walker, oh, by the way, I thought they did a phenomenal job of pitching against Aaron Judge. They kept the ball in Judge's weak zones, never let it get up to where he can handle it. So it's a copycat league. If pitchers can command, they will try to follow this. So Judge is going to have to make a big adjustment.
Which is something we don't do. We don't adjust, right? We just keep trying to hit. We try to hit home runs. We hit in the middle of shifts, the hardest shifts, which another rule change they're trying to major leagues, right? All the infielders got to stay on the dirt. You can't change the way the game's played by legislating a rule like that. You need coaching. Just hit the ball where it isn't, and it'll stop. Right?
Hitting is not easy. I want to make that clear. I'm not one of these guys that thinks, well, just bunt it or hit it over there.
Well, no, I get it.
But you still got to work on it. But you're 100% right. The game from day one has always policed itself. If you would just start hitting the ball over there, or when they're in these shifts and you see when shortstop's out of position, you lay down a few bunts. Good, like I saw a bunt. Colorado scored his first run yesterday on a suicide squeeze. Against Kershaw, and that's what you do. There are so many opportunities. The other thing you can do when they're shifting, I can't believe teams haven't figured this out yet. When they're shifting, you start the runner and either put the bunt down or hit and run, and then you don't stop at second because there's nobody to cover third. You're going to beat the guy at third. There are so many ways. I covered Tony Gwynn for 10 years. Tony Gwynn would hit 500 this day and age if they ever tried to shift him. And you can do so many things to beat the shift. And again, what are they talking about too? The other stuff they're talking about. Theo actually talked about, I think, with Jason Stark
moving the
about
mound back. Right?
Yeah, moving the mound back, and only a foot.
Only a foot.
Only a foot. And if you look at the scores yesterday, what were all the scores? 14-11, 8-6.
Yeah.
You can score runs if you have the ability to take advantage of the defense. And that's what baseball is. Anticipation, take advantage of the defense, score runs. And I think it's ironic that Theo left the Cubs, and now look at where the Cubs are.
Yeah, it is very interesting. I had this theory about the whole shift and all that if baseball, and love him or hate him, a guy like Billy Martin was able to get a managerial job today, and a few guys like that, the shift would go away because they would not allow guys just to hit into the shift time after time after time. They would say, he'd say, what are you doing? Let's adjust our approach and take advantage of what they're giving us, And a couple of teams that are going to let the managers manage and not the front office manage could probably fix this. And hopefully it's a cyclical thing and it'll turn itself around eventually. Maybe when Rob Manfred's gone.
That's a great point. And I think you nailed it again with the fact that no managers manage anymore. I don't call them managers anymore. They're basically, they're preschool attendants.
Yeah.
They just have, the things that I see that come out of Aaron Boone's mouth just drive me nuts. And that's why when we're getting back to the Mets, I kind of like Louis Rojas. I think Louis Rojas is a manager at heart. He's Felipe Alou's son. Felipe was one of the best managers I ever saw. He was an accountability guy. And also Louis Rojas is good. One of his mentors, one of the guys he really respected was Bruce Bochy. And I've known Bochy since he was a backup catcher with a bigger head than Jay Horowitz. He's got the biggest head in baseball. And Louis learned things from Bochy as well. So I think Rojas, given the opportunity to manage, that's why I find the Mets, and I wrote a column a few weeks ago saying the Mets can save baseball. Because the Mets are kind of, unless they go a different way, what I'm seeing out of the Mets, they're actually doing baseball things. They're allowing Chili Davis to coach his hitters to hit the ball the other way, to create events. So they're doing that. DeGrom does his own thing. He's not like any other pitcher, all these other robot pitchers. He doesn't go to the weight room, things like that. So I think
too much of that, right? I mean, there's too much of this upper body building. That's why these guys are hurt all the time.
Here's some more insight for everybody here. Before every game on the road, because we get there early as writers, you're in the press box at 2:00 for a 7:00 game, and you'll look down on the field and you'll see three figures playing like a baseball golf game, and consistently with the Mets on the road. And you look closer, and it's Jake DeGrom and maybe the bullpen catcher and maybe the other bullpen catcher. That's who he hung around with. DeGrom hung around with the bullpen catchers and maybe Steven Matz. And they would play this game where they'd hit the ball, and they'd have to hit it to certain parts of the ballpark or into certain parts of the stands. It was a way. It was a way that obviously you're killing time, but you're doing a baseball activity, you know. And so Jake was swinging the bat and doing things, and knock on wood, he's one of those guys that doesn't pull an oblique, just swing or break a forearm, swinging a bat like the guy in Arizona did. How the hell does this happen? And so you need more. I was talking to a former pitcher about this, just the other day. It wasn't Goose Gossage. I forget who it was. It wasn't Erskine, but Erskine mentioned it too. Those pitchers shagged so hard, shagged fly balls, that by the end of batting practice, they got their running in, and then they did extra running. Nolan Ryan, in the early years back when baseball was baseball, and they let you roam as a BBWAA member, baseball writer, Nolan Ryan used to do his post-game interviews with us when I was covering the Padres and on the road. He would invite us into the training room, and he'd be sitting there on the bike. He would do his whole post-game interview while riding the bike to get more work for his legs. These guys don't do any of that, except guys like.
It's funny, and again, I'm probably a little biased, but I always argue with guys when I say, and Carlos here, who has had a few comments, he's been dead on about the Mets and whatnot. We kind of disagree. He thinks the small ball's dying, and it's dying because it's being allowed to die. But the Yankee teams in the 70s and even the dynasty teams in the 90s, those teams didn't have guys hitting 40 and 50 home runs, right? No. They had good starting pitching. They had a deep bullpen. They played defense, and they had timely hitting. That's how the game's supposed to be played.
Exactly. And you don't want to, I'm not saying we turn it back into like those go-go Sox, White Sox teams, but if your players are that kind of player, I'll tell you what, if you did more of that now, the offense would jump because these defenses wouldn't be able to figure it out. And if you had a manager who did that, I'm hoping La Russa does that kind of stuff. But I also have my doubts that maybe he's not the way they won't let him manage like he once did, especially in that front office, because it seems like he was put in a position by the ownership group. But let me again, I'm going to shift to little things that I see that make a difference. Early in the year, and I take abuse for this sometimes from trolls on Twitter, but I don't care because it's like I say about my Hall of Fame vote. I don't care what you think about my Hall of Fame vote. You go cover baseball for 10 years, get your baseball writer's card, then you can vote. Then you can vote for the Hall of Fame. So I don't want to hear it. So
that's a good.
But I saw one of the first games I saw this year in spring training. I saw Eloy Jimenez from the White Sox playing left field, high fly ball hit, playing the Dodgers, I believe. And he ran into the center fielder when it was the center fielder's ball. First day. And I made a comment on Twitter. Of course, I'm being my acerbic self, America's most beloved sports writer. And I said, geez, I guess La Russa and the White Sox haven't worked on fly balls yet in spring training. So a lot of people go, oh, well, you hear all that stuff because they know everything. And,
do we have to change your moniker to baseball's most acerbic sports writer?
At times. That's the irony of my nickname. But what happens later in the year? The point I was making was this guy's being a goofball in left field, running into the center field on the first play. And it's not even a hard play. If it's a hard play, I can live with it. Where it's an in-between ball. But it's an easy fly ball, and he's getting in the way. Later in spring training, he does a home run hit. It's spring training. It's like I told Aaron Judge one year. I said, stop running into walls. Stop diving for balls in meaningless games. You're too big. You're going to get hurt. And he agreed. And he's made that adjustment. Judge has made that adjustment. So later in spring training, there's a home run hit, and it's taken off. You're in Arizona. The ball's going to fly. And this guy, he jumps on the wall and hangs on the wall with his arm and blows out his muscle in his arm. And now he's lost for the year. So my point is, by allowing little things to happen early, instead of getting in that guy's face early on and say, hey, let's go, focus, play left field the way it should be played. Maybe later in the spring, he's not hanging on the wall and blowing out his arm and hurting the team. So those are the little things add up in baseball. That's the great thing about baseball. Little things add up. And I think we've seen it in the NFL with Tom Brady. Tom Brady brought the little things, to the Bucks, and they win a Super Bowl. Same thing in baseball. Mookie Betts, one of the worst trades ever. Red Sox let Mookie Betts go to the Dodgers. He brings the little things like base running to the Dodgers. They suddenly win a world championship for the first time since 1988 when I was there when Kirk Gibson hit the home run. So little things mean so much in baseball. And this generation of people in charge, this generation of commissioner don't understand anything about the little things because they're always looking at big money things.
Yeah, and again, that's why I keep saying, can we survive the Rob Manfred era? Hopefully, it will not last much longer. Let's talk about a couple more positive things as we head into this season here. Who do you see as a team that could? I mean, we've talked about the teams that should do well. There's going to be some managers under some pressure. Rojas is going to have some pressure on him in New York to succeed, obviously. In Toronto, they're going to have some expectations, or Buffalo, or I guess wherever they're playing. The Padres are going to have some pressure. Who out of the teams that, besides the teams we've talked about and the obvious characters or obvious teams, who do you see as somebody that could come from nowhere, maybe make a big jump this year?
I really don't see anybody coming from nowhere, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
No. I see teams getting better. The Marlins, I would put the Marlins in that class of coming from nowhere if they spent a little money and got hitters, but they're a little short hitting wise.
It would be really from nowhere where they are this year. That's for sure.
But that pitching staff, Jeter and Gary Dembo are putting together some good things down there. So I would.
Donnie did a great job there last year. He should have been manager of the year.
That whole core, those three guys, Donnie Mattingly, Derek Jeter, and I'm not just saying this because of the Yankee connection, but don't forget Gary Dembo too, who took a lot of business, took over. And Dembo's the kind of guy, he may rub you the wrong way, some people, but he does it his way. So I respect that. And so they've created a lot of good pitching situations there. They need to get some hitters. Now that's got to be on ownership, and teams will trade them hitters. I do think one team I do like, if they could get it together, that this may answer your question, because the Braves are good. The Braves are really good.
Braves are really good.
Yes, and so that's why they're not a nowhere team. And I think they learned some lessons. And going back to little things, they lost the playoffs because Swanson's bad base running against the Dodgers. That was terrible.
Yeah.
And so maybe they learned some things. I'm pulling for the Phillies, and I'll tell you why. Because I love Didi Gregorius. I said it last year when the Yankees lost Didi. That was a huge mistake. They didn't understand what Didi did. And you saw what you touched on earlier with Torres. He's not a shortstop. It's just simple. Just make the decision. When I first saw Gleyber Torres in Trenton, when he was still in the minors, my first reaction, and again, I'm opinionated, but I think I know what I'm looking at. I said, he was playing shortstop, and I saw him go deep in the hole, kind of struggle to get a ball throw. I don't know if he got him out or anything, but it was too cumbersome. And I said, he's not a shortstop. He's a third baseman or a second baseman. And the Yankees think, all these nerds in charge think they can play any position anywhere now. And that hurt him yesterday too, to play at shortstop. Those little things hurt. So I'm pulling for the Phillies in a way, because I kind of like Didi. I like what they've done. Dombrowski, as much as you may dislike Dombrowski, he has a good sense about baseball. And his biggest problem through the years was building bullpens. So if he can build a solid bullpen there, and if they can sell Bryce Harper on hitting to all fields, I think they could be okay. But they have some, issues too. I think there's such a separation between teams now. I think some of the teams to watch in the future, the Royals could be good in a few years. I'm a big fan of Bobby Witt Jr., a tremendous shortstop. I can't wait for him to come up. I really like Charlie Hayes' kid. And
he's got a ton of talent for sure.
Pirates don't have enough pitching, but I do believe, to me, one of the keys to this season will be if the team the Pirates, if they will pick first. But I'd be very interested to see if they take Al Leiter's kid, Jack Leiter. I know from what I've seen, I would, but that's me. They may fall in love with the other guy, the bigger guy. Chris Jack's about 6 foot, 6'1", but he's the kind of guy, he pitches bigger and stronger and longer than he is. So that could be something to look forward to later this year as well. Something like that happening. Out west, I don't even count the Centrals. The Centrals are so bad for the most part.
Yeah,
agreed. Figure it out. How about the Twins? One little point on the Twins. I heard an interview this spring with Derek Falvey, their GM, and the broadcasters. I get it; they work for the team, so they got to be, they got to be careful. but he was raving. The GM was raving about this new way they've fixed Donaldson's calf problems and the protocol they have him on. First at bat, he did something with his calf yesterday. He had to come out of the game. They don't work on the right things to keep guys.
Yeah.
That's a whole nother monster thing. The Twins could be good if they went out and got one more starting pitcher. You know, I'm talking about an ace. Twins should have signed Trevor Bauer. And now, when you talk about teams that could have, could come out of nowhere,
But they're not going to spend that kind of money.
right. But that's what should have been done. You have to sign. You got to have an ace. That's one thing we've learned in baseball. You got to have an ace. And because of the Dodgers being so deep in pitching, and their bullpen probably being stronger than some of their starters, or their 5, 6, and 7 starters, maybe be even better than their one than Kershaw at this stage of the game.
Yeah.
So it's hard to beat those teams. And in the AL East, Toronto could be an interesting team. You know, that the injury hurts them with Kirby Yates, but they should have realized that was coming. But I do like the fact that they brought Springer aboard. I think this getting Grichuk now and getting some things. If they winning, here's the thing about Toronto: they're a young team. They're going to have to play in a very difficult situation this year, really not having a home. But if that team gets off to a good start, they start believing in themselves. Toronto could be last year's Padres. So that would probably be my long-winded answer to your question is Toronto could. If the Yankees allow Toronto to be good, they'll be good.
Yeah, they've got some good young players, that's for sure. Who do you see? I'll put you on the spot. Who do you see in the last 2 teams standing in October?
Yeah, it's going to be. It depends on the Dodgers and Mets in the NLCS. Whoever has a better series, and that's what Lindor, the big money, should pay off there. But I'm a big Corey Seager fan too. I think the Dodgers just. And talk about bizarre things, we didn't even get to it. How about Cody Bellinger's home run yesterday, where he ran past Turner? And Turner's a very intelligent player, and he just got caught thinking the ball was caught. But again, this is why you have coaches. If you're unsure, you look at the coach, and if the coach is telling you to come, so these are even the Dodgers make these kind of mistakes. That was that, and then Bellinger. If I just hit a home run, right? Here's another thing. I'm gonna. And people may get mad at me for this one too, but I don't care. Bellinger hits that home run opposite field. Turner is flying back at him, and Bellinger is drifting around like a normal home run in his home run trot. Posing a little bit. I'm cutting my angle at first base, and I'm looking right at Turner, and I'm doing this. I'm pointing. Go, go, go. So these are the anticipation things aren't there in baseball. So that's why I can't pick either the Dodgers or the Mets yet. It just depends who wins that series. So that's why I see in the National League. The American League, to me, it could go anywhere. The Angels could be a surprise team.
They could be
a surprise team simply because, the new GM is okay. He understands baseball. He's been around his whole life. He's got some people in charge who are really good scouts, so they can make some adjustments. The owner is motivated, so that's another team. That team could have signed Trevor Bauer. That would have been nice. But the American League, I still think the Yankees are going to get there simply because. But the more I watch them, sometimes I get frustrated because I say, "Geez, that's a game they should have won easily yesterday," and they don't. But I see the Yankees coming out of the American League. Nobody else really excites me that I'm thinking about. And the White Sox could be very good, but they already lost their left fielder. So surprise pick would be the White Sox. The other pick would be the Yankees, and the super surprise pick would be the Blue Jays.
all good picks. I'm a huge Yankee fan. I just have my doubts that the pitching staff's going to hold up and the defense is going to hold up, and Judge and Stanton are going to play more than 110 games.
Well, I know it was also very scary yesterday. If you're a Yankee fan, very scary watching the at-bats from Stanton. I mean, they were pounding him with the fastball. He couldn't get there.
It was ugly.
Yeah. It was ugly. And what do we have to read all year? And again, I've been there as a writer. I know what you got to write in spring training. It's a positive time. But all we heard about was Stanton's new approach or his new body, much more athletic.
It didn't look new to me yesterday.
No, and he's one of those guys when he gets hot, he looks good. But as the scout told me, Stanton's big problem is he has a grooved swing. So he'll hit the ball if it's in that grooved area, but you can handle Stanton. So I agree with you. I'm not saying the Yankees are there. They certainly have some talent. They need to make some adjustments. I would have loved to, even a little thing yesterday too, get Wade in the game late to lay down a bunt or to get that run in. You've got to get that run in the takes. And they didn't do it. And Tauchman, one last thing on Tauchman, just so people understand, that was a great play, I thought, by him too, breaking on contact. And he made a good effort at home. He wasn't one of those give up guys. It was almost like old school baseball. You could see he wanted to collide with the catcher. Yeah, but that's another thing baseball has ruined. I'm not saying you do the Ray Fosse, Pete Rose collisions, but the action play at home plate used to be one of the most exciting things in baseball.
Yep.
This commissioner took that out of the game as well, and I think that's a mistake as well.
Because of one injury to one star player, the rule has to get changed, right? Basically, I think it was the Buster Posey play, wasn't it? Basically, the impetus.
And Posey could have handled that better. And just like Daniel Murphy got hurt at second base, that was Murphy's fault. Get the hell out of there. You don't hang around second. That's why you talk. Look at some of the collisions through the years that Willie Randolph survived.
Oh my gosh! I remember Hal McRae knocking him to the warning track one night.
Exactly. And let me make this point too. Since we're talking everything in baseball, how is Willie Randolph not hired by a team?
That's a great point.
But certainly as a bench coach, Willie Randolph knows more baseball in his one finger than most of these guys know. But see, Willie's not a yes man, so that probably hurts him. But that's why this game still is good, but it can be great. I'd rather see it great. And if I have to be the one yelling out there, I'll yell. I don't care. Yeah.
I've kind of followed your lead. I've turned into my show's turned into Kevin Kernan Part 2, 2.0 in a way, because and again, I feel bad sometimes because I do still love the game, right? And I want it to be better, though. It doesn't have to be exactly like it was, but it's not really good the way that it is now. And I hate to be that old, fuddy-duddy saying, get off my lawn. And that's what I feel like sometimes, especially with the younger guys. Like, I know Carlos has had a bunch of comments here. I haven't put them all up, but they don't agree with me on everything. But let me.
Well, that's the game. You can make those comments and you disagree, but I've seen the game forever, and I spent 10 years talking every day hitting with Tony Gwynn, so I knew what Tony was trying to do. Talked to Jack Clark. Every great player in the last 30, 40 years, Sheffield. I've talked to him about the game. As much as people rip on A-Rod and I had some great discussions about baseball. He loves the game, and I know this sounds crazy to say this, but I'm going to go out there with it. I would love to see A-Rod involved in an ownership group, maybe not with J-Lo, but I would love to see A-Rod get in charge of.
They're done. Are they done today? Aren't they done?
Yeah, I would love to see A-Rod get in charge of a team because he really knows the game, and that's where we are. We complain because we love the game and we see the potential of the game.
Yeah.
And that's how people have to understand it. The game is not just home run derby. Home run derby is a great event, but the game and the other thing is these guys now don't understand the anticipation of the game. But I do think we're moving back towards players who are like that, and I think we're going to get the more players we get like that, the better the game will be.
Well, kind of tied to this, and we'll finish with this with this note. And I appreciate the time you give me this morning. I had this thought this morning, right? I was thinking about all the great players that have passed away in the last year and how sad it is. All these Hall of Famers, from Hank Aaron to Dick Allen and Tom Seaver, and all these great players that I grew up watching. And I know you did, and you covered a lot of these guys too. And how revered and how their passings were felt deeply by a lot of people, including myself. If we fast forward, we won't be here, unfortunately. Maybe we will be. Kevin might be here. I don't know. You'll last forever. But if we fast forward 40 years from now or 50 years from now, and these players from this generation start to pass on, are people going to feel the same way about those players?
That's an interesting question. And I think they do have their favorites now,
Yeah.
I think the players, it's up to the players. That's the answer.
Yeah.
I think this generation, just to make the comparison, I think DeGrom in some ways is this generation's Tom Seaver. I would like to see him take the bull by the horns a little bit more in the playoffs and really take the lead. But I think he's that type of player. I think Alonso could be the kind of player that you really like and watch his whole career because he's fun to watch. He just has to be careful he doesn't get too goofy. He needs to keep it in the center lane sometimes, and Judge. Yeah. But here's the key: those players, and we're talking about because again, I go to the Hall of Fame every year. I did in my job. That was one of my job duties, go to the Hall of Fame. Yeah. So I'd sit on the back porch and talk hitting with Cal Ripken, at the Otesaga Hotel. Bob Gibson would sit in the left-hand couch as you walk into the lobby from the back. He'd always be holding court there. Ernie Banks, before he passed, would be on the right-hand side. And you talk. Now you got the Robbie Alomars and the younger guys coming through, and you talk baseball with them. But those players, every one of those players I just mentioned, and Hank Aaron, of course, Hank was always a joy to talk to. Hank would be in the gift shop buying the Post, or something, and we talked. That's the kind of guy Hank was. Loved Hank. And but those guys, for whatever they did, and this is the key, and this is what some of these young stars don't get. Those guys made adjustments throughout their career. They just weren't a one-trick pony. They changed some things up, and there were one-trick ponies. Certain guys, were very good hitters or home run hitters, but they still had a weakness in a certain part of the strike zone. But the greatest players of all time made the adjustments. Yeah. And that's the thing that scares me about these players today. Even the great ones don't make adjustments. Now, I do feel like, say, Clayton Kershaw. Dodger fans love Clayton Kershaw. He's tried to make adjustments, and he's been a good guy for the Dodgers. So I do think. And the other difference we have, of course, the biggest difference is the free agency. How guys move from team to team, so you don't have that same,
there is some of that. Yeah, I think that's a lot of it. Yeah.
And I want to mention while we're talking about this too. This is very interesting too, because I'm going to have a story in Baseball Digest. Baseball Digest is kind of rebranded itself and it's done some.
God, I loved the Baseball Digest growing up. Loved it.
Yeah, I did. Loved it growing up. It's just a great. Always loved it growing up, and I loved it right on through. But Rick Cerrone is the publisher now, and or the editor, and his former Yankee guy and Yankee PR guy, and I have a story on Roger Maris coming out in I think it's the April edition, might be the May edition, but it's done already. I know I got it done, so I'm happy. But it's about this. Don't forget Roger Maris. He's 61 and 61, and here we are, 60 years later. And it's a nice story about his biggest fan who became part of his family. So there are still great stories out there with these guys. I think if baseball would allow these guys to play baseball, and I keep getting back to it, in my column this week I wrote, I want to see baseball be the comeback player of the year this year, because baseball is still a great game, and that's what I want to see. So we have to search a little bit to find these things. Yeah, that's what I do on Ball Line. Every Sunday I write a thing called The Story, which is kind of like a very interesting what happened in that. It could be present, past, or future, and then during the week on Thursdays I come out with Baseball or Bust, which is dealing with today's exactly what's going on with the game today. So there's still great stories out there. Don't get hung up just on the numbers. And again, I want to make this clear too for all these guys who think, because I'm not an old man yelling at clouds. I'm a young man in my mind. I'm a young man yelling at a thunderstorm that's coming through the game right now. And numbers were always in the game, Keith. Numbers were always in the game. They just can't run. they can't run the game. The game is still played by heart, blood, and soul, and that's what we saw. And of course, every year we see it in the World Series. The team that wins the World Series usually plays the game right. And so that's where I'll leave it. We'll see who does it. It's gonna be very interesting. I'd love to see the Padres. They've never won a World Series. Could you imagine the excitement that would bring? I don't know if they have enough pitching, even though they've made some great moves. I'm not the biggest Yu Darvish fan. Like getting back to what you were saying earlier, Yu Darvish, he's got that lead yesterday. He's got to lock it down a little bit. They won the game, but he couldn't handle. He's got to toughen up a little bit. There's still some great players that people love. I think if you go back to the Cubs, people are always going to love Anthony Rizzo, and there's going to be, if they play their cards right, these new teams that keep losing and get great, because that's how you get good. There's no magic formula. You get good by really getting a couple good draft picks and then making a couple wise signings. And going back to the Yankees losing in 2004, David Ortiz was the heart and soul of that team. There was a scout with the Red Sox who signed David Ortiz. I know other people get credit, but David Ortiz was signed by a scout who really believed in him with the Red Sox, kind of like on his own. And that made the difference with the team. So I still want to see, that's the thing that scares me most about baseball. The scouts are being pushed out of the game. They know the game the best. They're not perfect. They make mistakes. They're human. But if you keep pushing the human element in scouting out of the game, and what they've done to the we didn't even get to the minor leagues. The tragedy of the minor leagues, something so simple, and I'm going to address it in a future column, but imagine having no common sense. And again, there's some Ivy League kid that's in charge, that Manfred put in charge, that's made all these adjustments. He's gotten rid of all the great names of the minor league teams. I'm not talking about the individual names. I'm talking about the leagues.
I know what you mean.
Yeah. It's all gone, and now they have some generic, Southwest, BS team, like that.
Yeah.
They've destroyed the minor league. They're trying to destroy the minor leagues, but you need to have the minor leagues to make these players grow. And the last thing I'll say is that if you're a young player, I would love to see you play a little bit more in the winter leagues to get better and really hone your craft. Because every great player through the years that I've talked to has made that. Even Carlos can mention that to me the other. He played in Cuba when he was like 19. He played there I think he was there for he told me 5 months. And that made the difference for him. That's when he learned how to throw his curveball properly. So instead of doing the working out at some fancy gym and stuff like that, learn the game and the craft. If you're a young player, if you can play in the winter leagues and become that much better.
Well, you're absolutely right. I agree with you on a lot of that. And I want to touch on a lot of that stuff today. And as always happens, I'm thinking, oh man, I got an hour. I got to cram. And we got on a couple of subjects and we just start riffing, and it's easy, especially with you, Kevin. You're a wealth of knowledge, and I love your opinions and the way that you don't sugarcoat anything. People, please look at ball9.com. Kevin's got some great articles in there, as well as the rest of the staff there. Great stuff. If you're a baseball fan, it's a must read for you guys, I think, daily. So, Kevin, thank you for being with me. We'll have to have you back because we got a lot of stuff to cover in the minor leagues and whatnot. So we may have to have a quicker return from Kevin Kernan here soon.
Whenever you need me, I'm here. And, I'd love to talk baseball with you. And not because we agree on certain things. We can disagree. That's the beauty of the game. And that's
sure.
That point again. That's what baseball was for all of us growing up. We love to talk about it, hang at the corner, being in the stands. And baseball has a great product. The only problem is baseball has to realize it has a great product.
Yeah, I agree. Kevin, thank you for coming. If you want to chat for a quick second when I get off, if you got to run, that's great. And I'm going to end the show and say goodbye to Kevin and thank him again for his time. Thanks, Kevin.
Yeah, you're welcome. Great being with you.
Talk to you soon. Bye-bye. Guys, Kevin Kernan, one of my favorite guests, first guest I ever had. I thank him still for that great launch to my show, and just a tremendous hour. We didn't get to even a portion of what I wanted to chat about today. It's hard to do in an hour. I may have to have him back on soon, and he will agree to come. Watch him. I want to thank all of you guys that were here today. Carlos, sorry we didn't get all your comments up. It's not like Sunday. I can't get them all up. Frankie didn't get a chance to say goodbye. Good morning to you. Drew, Rick Sherlock, the rest of you that were here, thank you. All of you that will see this later on, thank you for watching. See you Sunday morning with the Stream of Consciousness show. And we'll talk about our guest next week, who will be Nancy Finley, the niece of Charlie Finley, who's got a book out been out for a while, about those Oakland A's of the 1970s. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye. Keith Enkel for TGI Sports Talk, right here on the Northeast Streaming Sports Network.